Hey guys, it's Ankit Kumar and welcome to fourth part of 100 JavaScript interview questions and answers. Until now we have covered 50 out of 100 JavaScript questions in previous 3 videos. This part is basically focused on most asked 10 questions of ES6 or ECMAScript 2015 and 2016. So without wasting time, let's start. Our next question in the series is question number 51, which is what are ES6 modules? And the answer is ES6 module is a file containing JavaScript code. There is no special module keyword for that, so we don't have any special keyword to define a module. A module mostly reads like a script, so it exactly looks like a JavaScript code, like any other JavaScript code. There are two differences between ES6 modules and normal JavaScript code. First difference is ES6 modules are automatically in strict mode. If you don't write use strict in your code, it will be considered as strict mode. Second difference is we can use only import and export in module. Everything declared inside a module is actually local to that module by default. If we want something to be public in module, we have to export that feature so that we can make it public and use in other JavaScript files. Syntax of ES6 modules or using ES6 modules are straightforward. We use import for getting functionality from another file or several functionalities from other file or several values or one value from another file. We use export for exposing functionality from a file or several functionalities from a file or several values from a file. So import to import from another file, export to export or expose current functionalities to another file. Once we have exported some of the feature out of our module, now we need to import them into code so that we can use them in plain JavaScript code. Let's look at some examples which contains code. First example is exporting module features. So we write normal plain JavaScript. You can notice that there is one extra keyword called export. So if we want to export value of name, which is square, we can just put export const name is equal to square. If we want to export any function, so we write export then function, whole function, which contains its definition and returns. This is the simplest way of exporting functions or values from one file. If we don't want to write export for each value and function, we can actually write one line at the end of code, which is export name and draw. So name is value and draw is this function. So in this case, we have to remove this export from here. Once we have exported these functions or values from one file, to use those values or functions into another file, we need to import those functions into our script. So let's see example for that. Example for that is this. Suppose we have a file square.js which contains many other exported functionalities, and we are importing from that file name, draw, which are already written here, and there are other functions also in that file which are report area and report perimeter. So that's how we export modules and we import modules. Our next question is, what are the differences between default export and name export? And the answer is, the functionality we exported in previous example was actually named export. Each item, be it a function, const or anything, has been referred to by its name upon export, and that name has been used to refer it to an import as well. So such exports where we write export with the name of function or value is called name export. Default export is designed to make it easy to have a default function provided by the module, and it also helps JavaScript modules to interoperate with existing CommonJS and AMD module systems. Let's now look at some of the examples. Let's look for the name export example now. You can see on my screen that exactly same code from the previous question. We have export const name square, then export function draw, which has same definition as in the last question. So we have written this export So such exports are called named export. If we don't want to write export at each line of the function, we just omit export and we write export name and row. This is also called name export because we are using variables name and function name to export it. In default export, what we do, we actually don't use export name and row, and we don't even write export at the starting of each variable or function. Instead, we write default export draw. So this file will only export draw function. So whenever we will be importing from square.js file, it will only import draw function from this file. So this draw function is default export from this file. So this default export is highlighted here. We can have another way of default export, which is this. So instead of writing just export at the start of function, we write export default function draw. This adding this default beside export will also default export our function draw from this file. Next question is, can you apply module to HTML in JavaScript? And the answer is yes, we can apply ES6 modules on HTML as well. We just need to apply it main.js module to our HTML page. This is very similar how we apply a regular script to our page with a few notable differences, and those differences are, first of all, we need to include type module in our script element to declare this script as a module. To import main.js script, we use this syntax. So we write script type module src is equal to main.js. So this piece of code will import everything from this module or ES6 module to our HTML code so that we can use it in our HTML. We can also embed modules script directly into HTML by replacing JavaScript code within the body of a script element. An example for this is this: if we write a script type module and we write our JavaScript code, in this way also we can use ES6 modules script directly into our HTML file. The script where we import module feature basically act as the top level module. If we omit it, or if we omit type is equal to module, then Firefox, for example, will give us an error, which is syntax error: import declaration may only appear at the top level of module. Next question is, what is the difference between spread operator and rest operator of ES6? And the answer is, the spread operator and rest operator have the same symbol, that is triple dot, which is here, you can see on my screen. And the differences between these two are, spread operators is actually spread individual data of an array to another data. The rest parameter is used in a function or an array to get all arguments or values and put them in an array or extract some pieces of them. Let's have a look on examples. So here we have a spread operator example, which is this. So what it is doing, we are using a spread operator. First of all, it is here. When we call add function, we are spreading the numbers array or nums array. So if we are spreading this nums array, which has two values 5 and 6, we are passing 5 and 6 to this add function. So the value of the parameter a will be 5 and value of parameter b will be 6 and answer will be 11. This is the example of spread operator, and that's how we use spread operator in our JavaScript code. Let's look at the example of rest operator as well. So rest operator example is this. So we have an add function that accepts any number of arguments and adds them all and return the total. So in this case, when we call add 1 2, this 1 and 2 will go here and it will just add this number and will return 3. If we call this add 1 2 3 4 5, all these parameters will go to add function and it will return sum of all these functions. Let's look at another example of rest operator. Another example of rest, here what it is doing, it is extracting all the remaining array values and put them in an array called others except the first item. Our next question is, what are the default parameters in JavaScript? And the answer is, Default parameters are a new way of defining default variables in JavaScript. It is available in ES6 or ECMAScript 2015. Let's look at the examples. In earlier versions, we used to write function like this, but in ES6 versions, we can rewrite this function like this. So function add a is equal to 0, b is equal to 0, return a plus b. If we don't pass any argument of a or b, then it's gonna use the default parameter value, which is 0. So if we look at this code and this code, we can see the differences between older version and ES6 version of default parameters. In older ways, we used to write default values with or, but here we can pass it as a parameters. We can also use destructing in default parameters. Let's look at the example. So in this example, get first has default values, which is 0, 1. If we just call this get function without parameters, it returns 0 because first value is 0. If we call get first with some other array, then it returns first value of that array. Let's look at another example, which is this function get array, which returns num, and num has default value of 1, 2, 3, 4. If we call get array without passing any parameter here, then it returns 1, 2, 3, 4. If we call get array with some value, then it returns that value. We can also use parameters defined first to the parameters defined after them. Let's look at the example. So here we have an example which is doing something with the value. What it is doing, we have default value hello world of value and it logs value. When we call do something with the value, it logs hello world. Our next question is, what are wrapper objects in JavaScript? And the answer is, objects in JavaScript are actually composite values, means they are a collection of some properties or named values. If an object contains function as a property, then we call that function as a method. If we want to invoke that method of object obj, then we write object.method. Let's look at the example. Here we have a variable called myname. If we just do console.log type of myname, it logs string. If we do console.myname.to uppercase, then it logs Ankit Kumar in uppercase. Here in this example, myname variable is a primitive string value that has no properties and methods. But in this example, we are calling to uppercase method, which returns Ankit Kumar in capital letters. If we try to access properties or set a new property on string primitive type, JavaScript will create a temporary object wrapper implicitly on it using string constructor function. That's why in previous example we were able to do myname.to uppercase because variable myname was converted into an object wrapper implicitly by JavaScript. Except for null and undefined, all primitive values have object equivalent that wraps around the primitive values. The wrapper objects are string, number, boolean, symbol, and big int. Keep in mind that JavaScript engine does not keep this wrapper object around. As soon as the work of method or the property is done, it will be disposed of. Next question is, what is the set object and how does it work? And the answer is, the set object lets you store unique values of any type, whether it's primitive values or object reference, as a collection. So set objects are a collection of values. We can iterate through the element of a set in insertion order. A value in the set may only occur once. It means it is unique in the set collections. If there is a value in set already, we cannot add that value again in that set. Set object actually applies same value 0 algorithm and it checks whether newly adding value is already available in set or not. Let's look at the examples. We can make set instance using set constructor and we can optionally pass iterable as initial value. So here is example. We can say const set is equal to new set or const my set is equal to new set. With the values we can pass value a, n, k, I, t. So set now has this value a and kit. We can add a new value to the set using add function or add method. Add returns the set object, so we can chain add calls many times. If a value already exists in the set object, it will not be added again because all the values or all the elements in set objects can occur only once. Here is the example of add. If I say my set dot add f, it will actually add f. If I say my set dot add g dot add h dot add I dot add j, it will add g, h and j, but it will not add I because I is already present in the set. So new set after adding all this will become a, n, k, I, t, f, g, h, j. So I, which was supposed to be added before j, is not added in this set because sets store unique value of any type. It doesn't care what is the type of that value being added. So let's look at the example. In our set which was containing a string earlier, we can add numbers as well. So we can do my set dot add 1, it will add 1 at the end of the set. If we say my set dot add 5, it will add 5 at the end of this. If we write my set dot add 1 again, then it will not add 1 because one value can occur only once. We can remove value from set using delete method. Delete method returns a boolean. It returns true if a value exists in the set object, and it returns false when value does not exist in that set. Let's look at the example. If we do my set.delete1, it will check whether 1 is already available in my set or not. 1 is available, so it will return true and it will remove 1 from my set. If I say my set.delete z, it will check whether z is available in my set or not. Because z is not available in my set, so it will return false and it will not remove anything from my set. We can also check if a specific value already exists in that set or not by using has method. So example is, if we say my set dot has a, it returns true because a is already available in my set. If I say my set dot has z, because z is not available in my set, so it will return false. We can get length of set instance using size property. So example, if I do my set dot size, so it will return 11 because my set has 11 element in the set. We can delete or remove all elements in the set by using clear method. Example is my set dot clear. It will clear the data, all data of that set, so my set will become empty. We can also use set object for removing duplicate elements in an array. Here is the example. If we have a const numbers which has many values and many values are repeated in this array, if we do console.log new set numbers, it will actually remove all duplicates from this array. And we have seen similar example in our first video of the series. The next question is question number 58, which is what is the proxy object in JavaScript? And the answer is the proxy object enables you to create a proxy for another object, which can intercept and redefine fundamental operations for that object. A proxy is created with two parameters. One is target. Target is the original object or the object which we want to proxy using proxy object. Another one is handler. Handler is an object that defines which operations will be intercepted and how to redefine intercepted operations in the proxy object. Let's look at the example below, which contains two properties in target object and no properties in handler object. So we have two objects. One is target with two properties, another one is handler with no properties, and we are creating proxy using new proxy target handler. Because handler is empty, so proxy 1 behaves just like the original target. So if we write console log proxy1.message1, then it logs Ankit, and proxy1.message2 logs Kumar, because there was no property or no function in handler. To customize the proxy, we define functions on the handler object, and the example is this. So here we have target same as earlier. Now we have handler2, which has a function which returns tag talks for everything. And now we are creating proxy2 with target and handler2. Because handler is not empty now, So proxy 2 behaves differently from the proxy 1. If we now console log proxy 2.message1, it logs tag talks, and proxy 2.message2 also logs tag talks. With the help of reflect class, we can give some accessors the original behavior and redefines others. Example is here. So we have a target same as earlier. We have handler 3. In handler 3, if property is message2, then only we return tag talks, otherwise returns as it is. Now we are creating proxy 3 using this handler and target. If we now console proxy 3.message1, it returns Ankit, and proxy 3.message2 returns tag talks because it check property if was message2 or not. This property message2 is matching with this condition, so it returns tag talks instead of Kumar. Our next question is, what is the symbol in JavaScript? And the answer is, symbols are new primitive types introduced in ES6. Symbols are completely unique identifiers. Just like other primitive counterparts like number, string or boolean, symbol can be created using the factory function symbol, which returns a symbol. Example is this. So if we want to define a symbol, we say const symbol is equal to symbol like this video. Every symbol returns by symbol is unique, so every symbol has its own identity. If we do symbol triple equal symbol, it returns false. Symbols are primitive. If we apply type of operator to one of them, it will return new symbol specific result, which is symbol. So if we say const symbol is equal to symbol like this video, if we check type of this symbol variable, it logs symbol. Symbol is type of that symbol. Our next and last question of this video is question 60, which is what is the iterator object in JavaScript? And the answer is, iterators and generators bring concept of iteration directly into core language and provide a mechanism for customizing the behavior of for-op loops. We are covering iterators in this video, and generators will be covered in next part of this video. In JavaScript, an iterator is an object which defines a sequence and potentially returns a value upon its termination. Specifically, an iterator is any object which implements the iterator protocol by having a next method that also returns an object with two properties. These two properties are value. Value is the next value in the iteration sequence, and done. Done is the true if last value in the sequence has already been consumed. If value is present alongside done, it is the iterator's return value. Once created, an iterator object can be iterated explicitly by repeatedly calling next method. Iterating over an iterator is said to consume the iterator because it is generally only possible to do once. After a terminating value has been yielded, additional calls to next method should continue to return done is equal to true. The most common iterator in JavaScript is array iterator, which returns each value in the associated array in the sequence. Let's look at the example. We have one example here which creates a simple range iterator which defines a sequence of integers from start to end spaced step apart. And it finally returns a value which is the size of the sequence created, tracked by the variable iteration count. This function is making range iterator without using iterator object. We can simplify this code using iterator object and it will look like this. We have make iterator range. If we log iterated over sequence of size result.values, it will return 5 numbers returned that took interval in between 0 to 10. That's all for this video, guys. If you found this video useful, please press like button, share with your friends, and don't forget to subscribe to get notified about more technical interesting videos from Tech Talks. If you have any question, any feedback for me, or any suggestions to improve my next videos, please write down below in the comment box. Thank you.